Very good morning and welcome to Core Finance London TV. My name is Malcolm Graham Wood, and today I'm delighted to say that in my CFO interview I am welcoming Traynor, CFO of Sound Energy.
Right, good
Very
morning.
good morning to you.
Good morning, good to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. And as I say, welcome along. It's been a busy time. You've got a lot of things going on. You recently announced various things. I suspect the best way is for you to start off by saying, where are you in the process? What's actually happening?
Great. Well, look, thanks for the opportunity, Malky. So Sound Energy, just to recap, so this is exploration in Morocco, in eastern Morocco, in the Tendrara area. And Tendrara is a really big piece of real estate, 22,000 square kilometers, which is kind of the size of Wales. So this is a very large piece of acreage that's been explored by the industry, by various players over the last 50 years or so. Sound's been in this for the last several years. Our strategy is basically to do three things. So to modernize the exploration activities and delineate some more resources, to firm up the TE5 Horst project into a developable gas field, and then to take all of that and to try to sell the assets and return the cash to the shareholders. So that's been our strategy. Our most recent announcement, which you may have seen, was basically pushing the pause button on the operations, so finishing up the exploration wells for now, and then moving into a very commercial phase as we try to sell this business on to the next natural owner. So that's where we are.
Good. And so you had, and what we're talking about here is the T5, which was a successful well, which made everything else happen and made you move into the sort of development process, right. I guess. You say now that you're in discussions with regard to the asset sale, people have generally said to me since that announcement came out was that it looked as if, and you mentioned the size of the acreage as well, it looked as if going to the next stage would take a more substantial, bigger business to be able to run that. It probably wouldn't have been the case if TE10 had come in as a flowing gas to the surface, but in this case there's a lot more to do, isn't there?
Well, look, I think our strategy is exactly as it's always been. We've always said we'll mature the TE5 field to be development ready, but it's unlikely that we will actually be the company that develops that field. We'll build out the nav in the exploration through the drill bit and through the seismic, and then we'll sail on. The reality in our industry is that exploration and appraisal and pre-FID is a relatively capital light activity, which fits for a company with our sort of balance sheet. And then development programs and major back-to-back drilling programs with multiple rigs is much more of a mid-cap, a larger company game. So we think we're at a natural break point here, and now is the right time to monetize these assets for the shareholders.
And in that process, you discovered that the Tadji reservoir is a difficult reservoir, albeit has been shown to hold a lot of gas. You're continuing the seismic mapping and so on that you've been doing. Is that right? And of course, talking to Brian Mitchner, you'd say that there are Paleozoic prospects in addition to the Tadji. How would you describe that?
No, great. Well, let's just step back one and talk about the exploration programs. So what we try to do is to modernize the work that's been done in the past and really take that forward. And the first stage, of course, is to acquire modern geophysical data, so seismic and gravity, process that and map it, and then delineate the prospects that are for drilling. If you look at the whole program, we've actually drilled 5 wells. One of them is the TE10 well, which is a subcommercial gas discovery, and the other discoveries are in the TE5 Horst, which demonstrated very good quality Taggy reservoir and flowed at commercial rates. Underneath that, we've been busy continuing to map that new seismic data and define new prospects. And I think particularly to the west and the south of the TE5 Horst and to the east of the TE5 Horst, we see very, very interesting prospectivity in the Taggy reservoirs. And as you say, in the deeper geology, in the Paleozoic, there are some very attractive prospects to go for there too. So we think the next natural stage for exploration is a very concerted drilling campaign, probably 5 wells, to really drill out that newly defined prospect inventory. So we're very optimistic about the exploration portfolio.
So let's do a summary of T5 now. You've got the feed process is complete.
Right.
You've had. I'd like to talk about the discussions you've been involved in with the gas sales agreement,
Right.
because quite a lot of us have been thinking it's sort of imminent, and we know that it's well advanced, or whatever the best way of describing it is. And if you could talk about that, and then tell us where that leaves you in terms of, with or without a sell, where you would be in terms of the final investment decision for T5.
Right. So T5 is a very exciting project for the company. We think of it as our foundation project. The gas in place around 600 BCF. We think that's a resource that can produce 60 million cubic feet a day. So I'll give you some numbers.
Yeah.
60 million cubic feet a day is roughly 60% of the Morocco gas to power market. So this is a very significant development for the country, and would be a very important element of the gas supply. Gas, of course, in Morocco today basically comes through imports from Algeria, with some smaller domestic players. So it's a big, important strategic set of decisions for the country, and we've been negotiating very effectively, actually, with ONI, which is the state-owned power company, to purchase that gas. On the table is a gas sales agreement, which is an oil price linked gas sales agreement, which at today's oil prices would give us an $8 to $9 per MMBTU gas price, kind of 2 to 3 times Henry Hub. Very, very, very attractive.
Yeah.
So that's there. In terms of the engineering for the field, the first step is what's called FEED, so front-end engineering and design. And that's been complete now for the pipeline and the processing plant, and we're just reviewing that final paperwork. And this project will be ready to take investment decision for construction at the end of this year. We think that's a very attractive package of potential to sell to the next natural owner of the business.
And so the work has been done, but in the process of taking it to the next stage, there would have to be a pipeline, and there would have to be a gas facility,
right,
which you were never expecting to pay for yourself, were you not, if I remember rightly?
So the development itself would require a pipeline, a 20-inch pipeline, which would be 120 kilometres to connect the field to the main infrastructure in the country, main gas infrastructure in the country. And then in field, a processing plant to process the gas, in a series of wells, obviously, to put the gas into that system. On a 100% basis, the cost of those facilities about $240 million, and Sound would be responsible for around half of that with our equity share. We could go forward and raise that finance. We have a vendor finance package on the table with a consortium led by Energas. But we think that this is the right moment to pause and see if there's a better owner of those assets before, obviously going ahead with the development.
Yeah, because, and of course you have had other Moroccan investors in the process, and you've had Schlumberger as well as a sort of shareholder.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in this project. So potential investors in Morocco who want to come in and be particularly part of that pipeline project, because it's a critical piece of infrastructure for the country. And of course, Schlumberger they're our partner in the license, and they're in for 27.5% of the profits and the costs.
Before I come back to the sort of the run-of-the-mill questions, I think it'd be a good time, since you mentioned it, to have a look at the asset sale process.
Yeah.
You've said that, following the announcement a couple of weeks ago, that you've appointed Rothschilds to do this. The process is underway. Perhaps you could give me some idea of what made you decide to do it, and then and where we are in the process at the moment.
Yeah, no, very exciting moment for the company and the shareholders. This was always our plan to try to monetize the positions. I need to be a little bit careful here because we are under the auspices of market regulators and so on. So I'm afraid there is a bit of a limit as to what I can say at this point. But essentially, the process is that we create a data pack to show to the potential buyers. And as you'd imagine, that's a pretty large piece of information. We've signed up Rothschilds to represent us in this process, and through Rothschild, obviously a very well-known global bank, they have a big network of potential buyers. And they've reached out to that network. Those potential buyers are reviewing that data. There's a series of management presentations where we explain to the new teams how this could all look for them. And then there would be a deadline at which people would be invited to table their offers.
And you're not going to tell me what that deadline is?
Well, what I'm really looking forward to, and all the team, is updating you on that. And that would be through an RNS, given the share price sensitivity that goes around all of that.
So once you've done you do the presentations, and you're presumably doing presentations beginning with two Rothschilds, and then you do presentations when there's a shortlist, or do you wait until that?
No,
or are you speaking to people all the time?
So the way it works is, so Rothschild run the process, and they would receive the requests for presentations, and they would facilitate that, and then we would obviously be there to meet those potential buyers. So it's very much something where Rothschilds are helping us along the way. I'm thinking of an estate agent analogy, but I'm not sure Rothschilds would really forgive me for that. But you can see the same.
I know what you mean. One of the things you put out within that announcement about Rothschilds and the Offshore was that you were cutting costs.
Right.
Now, a number of people have asked me how that comes in, because obviously the first question is, if you can cut up to 50% of your costs, why didn't you do it before?
Right.
On the other hand, people who have a more sensible idea saying, well, first of all, you're not going to drill T11 and various other things. Why don't you're the CFO,
right?
Talk me through the costs.
How does this all go around? So,
and you might as well tell us where your cash position is anyway here as a starter.
No, absolutely. So first of all, cash, the last update we gave, so these are all dollar figures, so $14 million of cash. And that's where we are, so that's a relatively good position. I think any CFO in the AIM in any sector would always reserve the right to raise cash, but where we sit now, I feel pretty comfortable actually. Last year, the G&A, so the annual spending on G&A, was around $12 million, and most of that figure is actually staff. So there's some offices and lights and so on. It's mostly staff. And what we've done is put in a cost program that takes that $12 million down to around $6 million, and we should be on that trend line by the end of this year, or perhaps even slightly sooner. And sadly, this means that some good friends and colleagues have left the company, and that's never an easy thing. What have we cut to make that happen? Really, I just go back to the observation that we push the pause button on operations. We can bring this back up quickly, but right now we're pausing on operations and focusing much more on the commercial activities.
And did you have anything? I mean, when you say in an announcement we're not going to drill T11, were there any things that you were obliged to pay for T11, or? I mean, I can't imagine you can get things right back, and you've got a rig, or you've got something contracted, or somebody. But
let me just clarify on T11. We really want to see that drilled. This is a very well-defined prospect in the Paleozoic, and I think it's a very exciting opportunity for Sound and for the shareholders. We're pausing to see whether it's better that is drilled by the acquirer of the assets, or whether it's something that's better drilled by Sound ourselves. So we're just taking a break here. So not cancelling, but just taking a pause. In terms of the cost of that, we're not committed on the cost front to T11, so I don't see a financial impact for the decision that we've taken.
No. And in terms of the process, presumably as part of the process with the Rothschilds, that they have asked you to give them what your working plan for the next 2 or 3 years. You must have had some detailed plans for the next 2 or 3 years, and you've had to do that, and therefore, you perfectly well that a potential acquirer is going to be, saying this is what they would have done, and.
We would expect the buyer, the acquirer, to pick up where we would like to leave off on the development project and on the exploration program. And I think the next owner would want to go forward with the TE5 development, build that CPF, build that pipeline, and to go forward with an exploration drilling campaign.
Morocco's got a very good reputation at the moment for actually encouraging companies to come in. Quite a number of other companies on the AIM market are in Morocco or recently come into Morocco. As you mentioned earlier in this chat, they said the gas price is high. There's a demand for power and everything else. You've always had a reasonable relationship with him and the people that work from the sort of government process.
Yeah, we've been made to feel very welcome in the country, and I think perhaps the flip side of that is that the positions that we have are actually the number one acreage ownership in the onshore in Morocco, and potentially the number one market share in domestic gas. So Sound's portfolio is important for the country in the energy mix. And obviously it's important for our shareholders from a value perspective. And we've had a very good experience of working and operating in Morocco, and relations are very good.
One of the things I wanted to ask is that there are other big companies, not including the people that I was just alluding to, the chariots and the predators and so on, who are in Morocco and so on. There are some major league companies and some majors in country already. And I vaguely remember Repsol and Shell and one or two others. Who else is in Morocco in terms of the big boys?
Well, I think in the offshore, which isn't our game, actually,
yeah.
in the offshore, quite a few of the majors have been through the offshore with quite mixed success. Onshore, I mean, Sound is the number one player there. You do see the brand names of some of the majors in the onshore environment. That's mostly on the downstream side, so selling fuels, LPG, and so on. And the notices have been missing from the upstream, which is
it's interesting because I always thought that Shell and Repsol and so on had some onshore acreage, but we're looking now to, those of us who are trying to find out who might be who might be on that list that Rothschild put to you.
Well, I think what you're fishing for is that next to our block, there's a very big piece of exploration acreage, which is actually owned by Shell and Repsol.
Right, that's one thing.
And it's kind of interesting. In our sector, generally the small companies follow the big companies. But in this case, we were there first, and then Shell Repsol came in after us and got this contiguous piece of acreage.
Yeah.
They, as I understand it, are a much earlier stage. That they're at the reconnaissance stage. They've not acquired seismic, and they've not done any drilling, of course. So much earlier stage.
Yeah. So in terms of those people who've been coming to me with various ideas about who might do it, and I think it's very interesting for you to point out actually that offshore and onshore,
right,
are two different things. We do know that, but actually the offshore stuff, which I was looking at 7 or 8 years ago, hasn't proved to be particularly successful, but the onshore is looking more interesting. So I wish you success with the sale process. What I'd like to do now is, as we come towards the end of the allocated time that we have for our chat, is for you to, based on the fact that you're the CFO, you're on the board, discussions with the CEO and the exploration team and everything else, there's obvious things you're going to say. Where would you like to see Sound Energy going in the next 6 to 12 months?
Oh, look, I think we're all very, very focused now on the sale, and a good outcome, the best outcome for our shareholders is the most attractive sales price for these assets. And we'd like to take that cash and then distribute it back to the shareholders, and that's very much our thinking, and that's what the team is 100% focused on.
And you've had a very loyal, big bunch of shareholders in terms of companies that, I've been in the industry for nearly 40 years, and in the last few years that the Sound, it's had its ups and downs, and at the moment in a more difficult position, but it's been a very popular share for people to own. So you've got a large bunch of shareholders who will want to follow you into doing other things. I'd like you to hopefully for those people who would be able to follow you in. So I wish you all the very best with the sale process.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure people will be pleasantly surprised.
All right, great.
Today my guest has been JJ Traynor. He's the CFO of Sound Energy. I'd like to thank him for being our guest. And thank you for watching. My name is Malcolm Graham Wood, and I look forward to seeing you on another interview soon. Bye now.